This is the story of Anna Corrigan, who discovered in 2012 that her mother Bridget Dolan had two baby boys in the Tuam mother and baby home. One boy is dead while the other is missing. Along with Catherine Corliss, Anna Corrigan brought out the story of the Tuam baby's burial scandal, which led to a commission of inquiry into mother and baby homes, which concluded in January 2021. This is Anna's story.
I went to Bernardo's in 2012 initially because there was something going around my father's side of the family about him being in an industrial home and his brother, and that he had a sister who died in there because my cousins are older than me. So I went into Bernardo's, and my father is dead. He's dead over 40 years and his brother is dead. So I went in and I was going to get into family tracing. So I went in and I met a lovely lady in Bernardo's, and I asked her, could she help me find out some information about my father? And I said, I believe that he was in an industrial school. I said, but nothing is kind of fixed. And she said, yeah, she said, I have no problems. So she got back to me anyway. And yes, my father and his two siblings have been sentenced through the courts to 10 years each in the industrial homes. Their mother had died of TB, and the three children were taken away from their father. My father and his brother were sent to Kilkenny first, and then they were sent to Glynn. And then my father's from Dublin, and then my aunt was sent to Loughrea in County Galway, and she died there at 13 years of age, and don't know where she's buried. So when I was in there, I had some remembrance. Again, as I said, I don't know whether it was real or not. That I'd heard some story that my mother had had two children. Herself and her brother were in the kitchen one day, and I came in. I was only very small, and they, my uncle turned around and shouted at me, your mother had two children. And my mother said, shut up you, and you go out and play. And of course, going out to play as a child is much more interesting than adults, kind of nonsense. So obviously that's what I remembered. I said to the lady, it could be a dream, it could have happened, it could not have happened, because I don't have any actual full remembrance of the time. So she said to me, well, if you want to give me a mother's name, and she said, I'll check it up for you. So I said, my mother was Bridget Dolan, she was from Galway. And so she said, fine, she said, leave it with me. And so I didn't know what was going to happen. So in December 2012, it was coming up to Christmas, she phoned me and she said, Anna, I have some information for you. She said, we're closing now for the Christmas, she said, so I'd see you in January. And I said, oh please, I said, please tell me. And she said, it's not proper protocol. I said, look, I said, I'm a grown woman. I said, please, I said, don't leave me like this over the Christmas. I said, if you have something, I said, please tell me. So she said, I just want to let you know, she says that, they had two children, two boys in June.
At this stage, Anna was a grandmother and had spent her entire life believing she was an only child. Nothing had prepared her for this moment.
I started to cry, and I phoned my daughter, and I cried on the phone to her, and I phoned my other daughter, and I just, what do you do with information like that? I was an only child. My father and mother had met kind of after all this, you know what I mean? So as far as I was concerned, it was an only child and enfant unique and something special. And then you hear this, and then you were only after finding out about your father, and just trying to make sense of it all. So it was quite devastating, because I had other things going on in my life as well. I had issues with work and family and stuff like that, and to hear this, I couldn't make sense of it. It was like just kind of a wrecking ball hit you. And I was just watching last night the documentary about the people with the adoptions, and it's just you're stunned, you're in shock. And I could see them last night trying to bite their lip, and the tears are coming, and they're broken inside. And I was kind of shattered into pieces inside. But how do you articulate? How do you deal with it? It wasn't until I went in January and I sat down in front of her, because I think she was a social worker herself, so like when you start to see paperwork and you start to kind of get a visual, and then you're getting feedback. She was a very knowledgeable lady, beautiful lady, and she went through piece by piece, and I knew nothing about mother and baby homes, and she's filling in on backgrounds, you know, and then you're sent off with this pile of papers. But she did identify that there was no death cert for William, which was very strange. She said she contacted the social worker in the HSE adoption service in Merlin Park, and she said she's a very young girl, and she said she was going to make a late registration. And she said, I don't think that's possible. You know, I mean, it's sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but you know, just we'll sort out that problem. Like, you know, 50 years later, we'll register a kind of a late registration. 60 years, that's okay. It's all done now. She said, no. But she kind of went on, and she was a very strange idea. Obviously, from all her knowledge, like that, she was able to say to me that this is not right. There's something very wrong about this. She said, I can see this, you know, going place. And I kind of said, what? So, but one thing I did say to her, I said, when I'm like a dog with a bone, I said, when I get something between my teeth, but I didn't know what I had between my teeth or where it was going with it, I said, I don't let go. So I went off then anyway with my information, and I wrote I said, where do you start? You know, so I wrote to Francis Fitzgerald as Minister for Youth and Children. Alan Shutt, I think, was the Minister for Children. I wrote to the Taoiseach, and I said, I have a brother missing, like, you know, can you please help me? You know, what do you do with it? So it was only as time went by then, like, you know, you're kind of getting your feet in the ground and kind of, so there was no kind of firm response or anything. I mean, you have no idea of the scale or the scope of it, you know. I mean, I had heard about the Magdalen laundries, and I had heard about the industrial homes, and, you know, like, people got apologies and they got compensation, and when you're on the outside looking in, it doesn't look as dark as when you really, like, as the years went by, I realised how dark and how nasty that whole, as a friend of mine said, it's like going down the rabbit hole. It's like Alice in Wonderland. But I thought, you know, somebody would come up with some answers for me, but no. So
did you think you'd end up having to do all the work yourself, or
I thought people would be straightforward and come back with answers, and just, you know, that it would be, you know, just tell me. Like, I mean, when I got the paperwork from Bernardo's, they'd handed me, and she had handed me, I got 32 pages from the ledgers, and I've got, they didn't actually send the death certs, but they did eventually, because they some kind of old transcript out of a copy of a book, so I demanded them. So she said, I will get them for you, the death cert and the birth certs, and she got me the baptismal certificates. So that was, because I, you know, like, we're on the, but little did I realise what I was getting into, you know. These children were baptised because there was water poured over their head within the first day, because, I mean, now when children are getting baptised, they nearly walk up to the font. You know, there was always that urgency of, as opposed to stillborn, or, you know, but children were always baptised within a day or two of birth, you know, even though for my own, like, you know, so it was always a very quick thing that was done. Should that happen to you then after? So anyway, then time went by, and I was kind of going around in circles a bit. But then in September, my son-in-law said to me, you know, about the brother that didn't have the death certificate. I'd been kind of mulling over the idea. And he said, why don't you go down to the police and make a missing persons report? So I went down to the local police station anyway, and I walked in and I said, I have a brother who's missing. She said, when did this happen? What's his name? I said, William Dolan. I said, when did it happen? I said, 1951. She kind of looked at me and said, oh God, here we go. Now they're going to bring in the men with the white coats. And she said, no. So she brought me into a room inside, and she sat down and was a very, very caring lady. And with the little bit that I knew and what I told her, she cried. So she said, I don't know if it's a valid case on it. So she said, I have to refer this to my superintendent down in Lucan. And she said, I will be back to you, and, you know, we'll firm it up. So fair enough, the following week she was back, and the superintendent said yes, it was a valid case, and come down and make a formal statement. So I done that, and she said this would be now passed down to Tuam. So that was September 2013. William's case was passed to Tuam.
And what happened since with that case?
Nothing. Sorry, I just, this is my correspondence with the police. And I have emails and still nothing. I have a solicitor on now who's working as my agent, so, and he's still not getting anywhere. But there was a lot of to and fro, and I thought they had a junior, but when I went to Tuam, then they did contact me from Tuam, I'm not saying, but there was nothing concrete done. So I had a lovely guard contact me, and she had gone out to see Catherine Cordes because she was from Dublin herself and she didn't actually know much about the Tuam area. So she had heard about Catherine Cordes and the research she was doing. She'd done something for the Journal of the Old Tuam Society. And she went out to see her just to establish what the home was and how it worked and to try and get some background information. So she had asked Catherine, could she put me in contact with her? And said, yeah. So that's how I made contact with Catherine. So,
And so at this point you had no clue that there were 796 children?
No.
So how did you learn about that?
Well, when I got in contact with Catherine, they had set up a graveyard committee down there, and there was a few people on it, and I think Catherine was the advisor because of her research. And then they decided that they were going to collect monies to put up a plaque and reorganise the area. And you know, it's a graveyard. I mean, at that stage, what else can you do with it? You know, like you mark it, you do respectful things, you make it nice. So that would have been coming into 2014. So I went and I gave some money towards the plaques because there's nothing else you can do, and I found that my brother's John's name was on it, and everything was going ahead nicely. And Claire Daly had got in contact with me and asked me would I speak to Martin Sixsmith. He was coming over to do a documentary, and I said no because I was very, very unwell at that stage, and I didn't want to be out in public. I actually had agoraphobia, lots of things going on. I couldn't leave the house and I was very ill anyway. But so I referred then him on to Catherine Cordes. So she spoke to him. And on foot of that then, the County Council gave £2,000 to the Graveyard Committee. And also the nuns had given £2,000 to the Graveyard Committee to sort out the area. Because I had got a letter from the nuns in 2013 stating that the graveyard did exist and worked as a common graveyard at the back of the home. So I already knew. So I tied it in with the area that was. So anyway, it was all going ahead. My piece of land in Galway, I was going to sell it and give the money towards. But then as time went by, my friend's brother actually. Catherine had said 2 boys had found the bodies, and I have a friend who lives in Tuam, and his brother is actually the guy who found the bodies. So I asked him would he mind if I put him in contact with Catherine, and he said no, not at all. That's what. So he got in contact, and it turns out that my friend was in the same class as Catherine, small world. And then I also got the inspection report on the home. And I gave that to Catherine. As I say, I wasn't coming out to the force, so I just, because I knew she was doing her research. And then at one stage, then I think, I don't know how it came up, but Catherine said to me that it was a septic tank in the area, you know, so kind of, well. So, I mean, I was, again, like you're on unsure ground, like, you know, so I mean, you know, there's 796 babies that she had discovered, and they're in a septic tank, and you know, and they're in this area, and you're kind of going, and we're putting plaques up, and you're still going along the plaques, but there's something not right here, you know what I mean? It's not a graveyard, and it's a septic tank, and you know, and again, I'm not well myself, so I'm a bit crazy at this age, so I said, So I'd actually, I got the mail on Sunday, which is a paper I don't normally get, and Oh yeah, I think I'd seen something before about the Bethany homes. I think Mary Lou MacDonald had something about putting up the plaque over the Bethany homes in Mount Jerome. And I was concerned about a plaque and whatever. But anyway, I seen an article by yourself, Alison O'Reilly, and it was the Bethany homes, and it was about the commemoration ceremony there, and I kind of went, so they have babies, you know, but they're in a graveyard and it's unmarked. But I kind of said, okay, so I have to go somewhere with this. And I don't particularly like the press, as I told you, but it has to go somewhere. You have to get it out. So anyway, I contacted yourself, and I said it was I about my mother's story and about the work of Catherine Cordes and the 796 in the septic tank. So then I was contacted by yourself because I put my name and address, and you contacted me, and then you contacted Catherine, and then the story ran in the Mail on Sunday, and that was in May 2014, and it didn't seem to take any gravitas. And then the following week, then you ran the story of my father and my Auntie Molly, who was lost in another unmarked grave in Lochray, and still nothing. And then Philip Boucher Hayes and Niall Boylan, they kind of alluded to it, and I know Niall had been a survivor himself, the homes. And again, you must remember, I'm only catching up at this stage, you know. So then it went in the Mail on Sunday, in the Mail online, and then all hell broke loose. But I wasn't in the firing line for that, because I was just known as the sister of the Dolan brothers, because I really had to keep my health in check, and I was very worried about that. So then everybody went to Catherine, and the full onslaught started, and every newspaper in the world got a hold of it, and it was in Reuters. And I mean, I have a guy staying, he's from Croatia, and he showed me in the Croatian newspaper, it was everywhere.
How did you feel when you knew you had instigated all of that, and next thing it was a global story?
Great. It's the way it should be. Because one thing I know about justice is a very hard thing to get in Ireland. And when you look back at previous things like the Hep C, the blood, the symphysiotomy, you know, the different things around what has happened to women, right? There is no justice. Like, I mean, they started off in the hepatitis C. Some of the women died. They didn't compensate their family because it was only her alone could, you know. They were blocking people. Oh no, you didn't really have a symphysiotomy. I mean, you know if you have a symphysiotomy, but you haven't proved it categorically. And now we know going forward what they're doing with the people with the cervical cancer. And I mean, but I kind of, well, now it's out in a real public domain. So we may get justice, not justice Irish style, because I knew about the Magdalen homes and about Hyde Park and the mass grave up there and how they managed to kind of do away with that, you know, like, so anyway, when the full onslaught started, then I said, now we're getting somewhere, you know, that kind of way. So again, I'm still only learning myself, you know.
Yeah, because you were never involved with any adoption rights groups?
No.
Nothing like that?
No, I just was working solo.
Anna continued to work on her two brothers' cases behind the scenes. But the publicity surrounding the story of the Tuam babies opened doors for Anna to meet other family members whose children were in the grave and survivors who went through the home.
After that, I think then Catherine had brought Peter and PJ out onto the Vincent Brown show, and then they come up to see me, and we're sitting there at the kitchen table, and I was kind of going, geez, they could be my brothers. I know they weren't, but the age profile, and then they told me what their mothers had told them, and I'm trying to piece together. So I'm getting a picture of what my mothers and my brothers would have went through them. So as I say, again, I was in the house, agoraphobia wasn't going anywhere, so I said I'd start up the Tuam Babies family group and at least try and bring us together, because I mean I could have just stayed with the police, but I didn't. It'd be nice for people to come together and, you know, be of assistance, and I was away 20 hours a day, so I could write letters and that for people.
Anna was successful in obtaining documents in relation to her family members because the Commission of Inquiry hadn't been established yet.
It was the AIRR project in the Department of Health, and somebody had told me to try there, and I had written away, and they had records for the industrial homes, and I wrote away initially about my father and his siblings, and they had nothing. And then I said, sure, to hell with that, right away. And I knew they didn't cover the mother and baby homes. But then to my shock, I got back the inspection report because John's name is on it. Everything else is redacted. So once you're named on it, you can get your paperwork. So when I seen the inspection report, I went, oh my God. You know, like a child born normal and healthy, almost 9 pound in weight. And then at 13 months old to be emaciated with a voracious appetite. No control over bodily functions is something seriously wrong. Something seriously wrong. And these were all nurses and nuns. And there was a doctor in situ, and there's something not right here. Yeah, you know.
And like, that's your brother.
That is my brother, yeah. That is my brother. So I went down to the police. And they had on his death certificate that he died of the measles. And to add insult to injury, they said he was a congenital idiot. So I went down to the police again, and I said, that child did not die of the measles. That child died of neglect and malnutrition, which has been further reinforced now since I've read the section in the report on the home in Tuam. I mean, it was hell on earth, and it was stated that was one of the worst. Babies wrapped in blankets, babies wrapped in jumpers, the cold, the misery. He did die of neglect and malnutrition. And then again, I mean, I can go to the other side of my thinking. Did they falsify his death certificate? Because I'd read other stories about, I'd read on Bishop Accountability about a lady who was sent for adoption to America, and the family were told that she was delicate. And when she arrived, she had epilepsy, she had rickets, the family were in shock because she was a mail order child. They were in shock when they received her, so they didn't seem to mind. So is he? But we can just take it for the moment that he is in the grave. But I did make the report. And again, the police took the report in good faith. I have the height of respect for my local police station. And they sent that down to Tuam. So now in 2014, we have 2 cases with the Tuam Gardaí in relation to the Dolan brothers, my brothers.
But no, they've never been advanced.
They've never been advanced. Like, I mean, I've been... I'd write a letter to the commissioner, I'd write it to the superintendent, I'd CC everybody, I'd put the Minister for Justice in, I mean, you name it, and it's still not been advanced. But I did in 2015 have a visit from the inspectorate group in Tuam. They came up, and I had the detective inspector, the detective sergeant, and the detective guard. And they stayed, they were in my house 3.5 hours. So this was pre the excavation of the site. So they asked me what did I want, you know, and it was Tuam. I said, you know, you have to either exhume the site to find out what happened to my brothers, or bring out the nuns and make them accountable for what they did. I mean, I didn't put them there, they put them there. So that you have to get answers on this. I said, because the commissioner can come and go. I said, but you're going to have to answer my cases.
In 2014, the Bon Secours nuns told the world that they were shocked at the discovery of the Tuam baby's grave. But in a letter the year before, they told Anna Corrigan they knew there was a children's grave there.
At this stage, I'm starting to understand that nobody but nobody, and it's lies, subterfuge, intrigue, obfuscation, obstruction. You know, you start to learn as you go along, as you start to go down the rabbit hole. You start to realise that this is what it's all about. And then when you start to read back then on stuff about the industrial homes and the Magna, you start to see a picture evolving. Because when I opened up the site for the Tuam babies on Twitter, I said, this is not just about the mother and baby home. This is about every industrial home, Magdalene home, county home, mental home, and on and on and on. And I mean, you can put in there the fostering out. This was all a big machine that ran on the blood, sweat and tears of innocent women and children. But the state, as you look at it, the state did not want you to put the pieces together. Tuam, I went to the old workhouse, the children's home, a long 2-storey building in its own original grounds. These were kept and had flower beds. The home was run by the Sister Bon Secours of Paris, and the Reverend Mother showed me around. Each of the sisters is a fully trained nurse and midwife, right? With the number of deaths, right? Some were also trained children's nurses. Now, I'm not saying this is what they said. And no married girl would come there to have her baby. She'd agreed to stay in for 1 year during the time she looked after her baby and assist with the domestic work, right? There were 51 confinements in 1954, and the nuns had now 120 children. For each child, the mother in the home, the Galway County Council paid £1 per week. This was a pittance. If a girl had 2 confinements at the home, she is sent at the end of the year to the Magdalen Home Laundry. Now, this is what he wrote in his book in Galway. Children of 5 or over attended the local schools. All the babies were in cots, and the Reverend Mother said, "We wouldn't allow a girl to take her baby to bed with her unless it was at least 2 months old. This is probably, then she is probably fond of it. Before then, there might be a slight by accidents. The whole building was fresh and clean." Right? I just want to... Oh, yeah. In the garden at the back of the home, the children were singing. I walked along the path and was mobbed by over a score of younger children. They said nothing, but each struggled to shake my hand. Their hands were clean and cool. Then I realised that to these children, I was a potential adopter who might take some boy or girl away. This is what, March 2021, and I started this in October 2012. I'm still sitting here in the same place as I was. You look back at any pictures, my workstation,
Yeah.
and what has been advanced.
Anna now had to look back on her life with her parents with new eyes.
I've had to do a lot of soul searching because, when you're involved in this, you put up your armour, but the armour isn't always on. I cry, I think a lot, and I kind of believe maybe my parents didn't tell me to protect me, that I could just go along and be a child, that I didn't have to carry their burdens,
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, but then when you do find out, then you try to piece together who they were, why they were the way they were. If my mother had a dark period, would you recognise as a child if she was cranky? Like when, maybe when John's birthday came round, how did she feel? But I'm this size, I wouldn't know. Did she... We lived in one room in a tenement house. Where did she go to kind of cry? Did she take herself to the park? Did she go see her sister? When William's birthday came around, did that hurt, right? Obviously it did. Anybody that's lost her. And then when she had me, golden child, first baby, no, not first baby, third baby. And as said in the book there, my name is Bridget, stated that. Was she afraid someone was going to take me away from her? How did she feel giving birth for a third time, being treated as a respectable lady, allowed inside the door? You know what I mean? Wasn't to be looked on or frowned on, but I'm sure the doctors had identified that she had other babies. They would have known that. What kind of joy and sadness did she feel at the same time? Obviously she cried for the sons that she didn't have, and then she's the joy of having me, and I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. And it's really... I read a book one time, and it was written by a guy, and his parents, I think they were from Czechoslovakia, but they lived in America, and he was trying to piece together his life. So he went back to Czechoslovakia, and he went to the villages where they were, and he tried to garner little bits of information about, did anyone know his mother, and he was and someone knew, and what happened with her father, and who, blah, 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 blah. But then the second part of the book, and I always kind of make the analogy to my own life, the second part, he actually wrote a novel, but he had to fill in the gaps of what he didn't know. He wrote what he did actually know, and then he had to fill in the gaps on what he didn't know. So I'm still at that stage. So there is a lot of gaps, but I'm just hoping that they can be filled in, because...
Does it make sense?
Does it make sense?
Now, looking back at your mum and your dad, does it make sense that something was missing now?
Again, I haven't come to a conclusion on that, because my father was a very soft man. He never raised his voice, and he was very gentle. And then when I think about 10 years in an industrial home, and I look at my own grandchildren, like we'd say I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So that would have been something 5-year-old. That would have been the age my father was and his brother was when they went in. And I'm looking at, how could they process this, right? Then you read the next piece, the sexual, physical abuse that went on, because they said in the Commission's report it wasn't as bad as the industrial homes. The sexual abuse in the industrial homes was much worse. So was he sexually abused? Was that why he was so quiet? My uncle was very quiet. He had a mark on his neck or something. I believe his daughter asked him about it, and he nearly hit the roof, and he was a very gentle soul. So obviously something had happened. He was 53 when I was born. So I think he had lived maybe a life of angst. And then when it came to having me, it was like having a grandfather and a father. So I think maybe he'd come to terms with his demons. Maybe I was a spark of new life for him, And then my mother was a very practical lady. She loved Arden. Because when she'd finished the second time in the home in Tuam, she went up to work in the laundry in the Bonsecourt private hospital in Glasnevin. Very meticulous about Arden. And I mean, anyone I knew, they ironed. But she ironed the collars and folded them over and the things. And, it didn't register with me. I said, your ma's great at ironing. But now I know, because that's what would have been expected when she was doing the priest laundry or the nuns bits and pieces there, or sheets for the the inmate. Well, there wouldn't be inmates to be paying guests in the Bonsecourt hospital.
Was she soft, your mum?
No, my mother I think had a bit of a vacuum in her. She was protective of me. But very practical. And I think, because I'm in counselling myself, and when you hang on to that practicality things, you're in control of something that you can be in control of. Because I remember saying something, we were chatting to a counsellor, he was saying you come home and, hypothetical scenario, the wife has the place spotless, there's something wrong. But everything was, there
was order.
Order. And even the way she made the beds now in hindsight, it was a real hospital bed, an army bed, So I'd say she made them up in the hospital in the Bonsecourt as well. Because I know she did actually tell me, I knew she worked there, but I had no association with Bonsecourt Mother and Baby Home and the Bonsecourt Hospital. But she did say that she had actually been cleaning the toilet. So I mean, okay, so she worked there, but there was a piece of the toilet missing, and she had cut her vein, and she had the blood, or the artery, and the blood had spouted up to the roof, and she was actually they had to put her into and do an operation on her. So I assume for the first time she was probably in one of their proper beds. Because, and I also found a cutout as well from Kevin Barry, who died in Mountjoy. He was only 18, one of the heroes of the around 1916. But his mother, and she was in the bed beside me. She told me this when I was growing up. And I kind of, it was Kevin Barry, he was the mother, right? But I found a piece of newspaper cutting. And it was the time she was working in the Bonsecourt Hospital, and Kevin Barry's mother died in the Bonsecourt Hospital in Glasnevin. So, this is the piecing together that you're actually doing,
Anna herself went on to be a lone parent with 2 children at a time when it was still frowned upon. But in this case, she had her mother's support.
Well, I mean, when I think back on it, she never made a comment on it. She never threatened me with Magdalene homes or mother and baby homes, and you're just pregnant, that's it, And she did idolise my eldest daughter. She did idolise her because, again, I also think, as well, a baby for her, that kind of thing. And me and her, mothers like and daughters. I mean, there is no formula for it. Like, you know what I mean? It could be a Scorpio pitch, and you know, she could be quite strong in her way, but you know, she was always very supportive. Because I remember one time, my father was dead, and she was invited to a wedding, and I had to have my daughter, and I wasn't invited. No, because you know, you having the likes of me at a wedding. But she actually wrote and said, well, there's only two of us here. She's not good enough to come, I'm not going. She didn't go.
So she was with you all the way.
Yeah, you know.
You could fight, but no one could fight with you.
Exactly. I mean, that's, you know, that's a given. Sure, I mean, if your daughters, myself, anyone that's reared and kind of knows, you know, we don't live in kind of these little storybook kind of, we live in real world, you know, falling in, falling out, you know, that's the way it is.
How do you feel about her now? All she's been through?
I wish she was here now and I wish I had known sooner. You know, I don't think maybe she realised quite how resilient I am, because I was always a fighter all through my life. I mean, as I said, he drive motorbikes after the Egypt, you know what I mean? I'd always take on a cause. I mean, and one of my friends even said to me, she said, Anna, she said, all the time, I know she from the time I was 12, you were always into, this is wrong, this has to be fixed, you know. You take on, you know, you wouldn't stand up for the national anthem because we didn't have a female president. And I used to get into terrible trouble because at the end of the night it would be all Sheena Fina Fall, and everyone would stand up, and you know, and I wouldn't stand up. Why are you not standing up? I said, I'll stand up when we have a female president, right? That's not the point. And I said, I'm not standing up. So I was always if I had known, and it would have been a lot sooner, I would have been on my Trekkie searching. And it's possible, I've heard different scenarios. Some people got quite a lot of information because the doors were open. Some people got nothing. So I mean, that would have been in the laps of the gods anyway. But I could have been maybe a bit more empathic towards, because when we're fighting, you kind of go, shit, you know, like, I mean, and I'm not kind of, well, she had a hard life, so I have to be nice to her. I don't mean that. But you could kind of mirror off your own life, shit, you know, that was not nice, you know what I mean? That happened and shouldn't have happened, you know what I mean? And I could have been on a major rampage at that stage, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but she ain't here now, and all I can do is kind of do what I'm doing, and, you know, but she has, I believe, by my coming out and by me speaking, I mean, I am the voice of my family. That's as simple as it is. I'm the only one that's there. Don't know whether John is dead. We can only assume he is if he's on the 796. But then again, I don't know if I trust any of them. Don't know where William is. My father and mother are dead. My aunt is dead. She's dumped in some godforsaken hole. I don't know where. My Uncle John is dead. So, I mean, I'm the only living. I know I have my own children going forward, but I'm the voice of my family. And I will not rest until I get justice. And that's why I will kind of, I like to help people, you know, that kind of thing, because I'm pretty good at writing letters and I'm pretty good in that kind of way. But this whole cause has to be pushed forward. And I mean, my heart bled when that report came out because it floored me, right? But I didn't walk in the shoes of the Holmes. I can't even imagine what people who did. That's why I kind of step back a bit, Anna. This is not, it is, you are the voice of your mother and stuff like that, but these people, and when I say these people, I'm not being disrespectful, the people who suffered, women and the children who are now grown men and women, this is their time, you know. And I mean, if I can do anything to help, you know, to give a voice and to carry on with the voice of my mother, but this is what they have done to those people. Oh my goodness. It was bad enough in the beginning to grow up and to know like what had happened, and if you were a child and to be called a bastard and to be called, and if you were illegally adopted to get a phone call at 60, and you know, and the mother's being told keep your head down, just go off and kind of live with your shame, don't tell anyone, you know what I mean? And then this report to come out, they were floored, absolutely floored. I cannot, you go in, you tell your story, and then they said, well, we destroyed it. And if there hadn't been a pushback at that stage, that would have just stood. That was just an open gambit. They're gone, push back. Oh, well, I'll write them. Mr. Roderick said, I'll write them and we'll see if they're there. Oh, well, we'll have another look, another push, right? Oh, well, it looks as though we might have backup tapes, but they may not have the day. Another push. Oh, they appear to be here. Another push. Oh, we'd have a look and they're all here. I mean, and you see that it appears, and you see in one of our members, Annette McKay, like, I mean, what she got for her report. I mean, it was disgusting. It was an insult to her mother, her baby sister who's lying in that pit and still lies there together with all the other 796 and all the other homes. I mean, my heart bleeds for every one of those 9,000 children. But I mean, if I can be of any assistance to any of the people there, but what I do is I look after Tuam because, and if people ask for help, I help.
Despite the contents of the final report into the mother and baby homes, Anna and the Tuam Babies family group say the fight continues.
We have 11 of our family members in the pit. We're waiting on this bill to come through. Now, I mean, here's another. You use Section 28 of the Commissions Act to open up a grave or a pit. And you go in and you exhume and you excavate and you exhume and you take body parts out for carbon dating. Nobody can tell us where the bones are, the pieces that they took out, possible DNA. And then they close it back up again and they put grass seed on it. Now we need a law to open it halfway through an exhumation, you know. Now we have to wait for that. It's just, you couldn't write this stuff. But I mean, my heart bleeds for every living survivor, every woman. I mean, I have people come here and you see grown men. And I mean, I have a 52-year-old grown man who's a survivor of sexual abuse in an industrial home. And we sit and we have a cup of tea and we have a chat. But you can see that just peel it back a little bit and you see the damage. Your people on the phone, you know, they just need to talk, you know what I mean? Just to be heard. And then they go in and they're supposed to be heard in this commission. Yeah, it's an insult, an absolute insult. And it's an insult to my mother's memory and my brother's memory, even though I didn't go in and tell. They wanted me to come in, but I said, no, I'm dealing with the police. Thank you very much. Okay.
So the fight goes on.
The fight goes on. And on. And on.
Anna's mother's story is now in a book called My Name Is Bridget, the story of Bridget Dolan and the Tuam Mother and Baby Home. It was published by Gill in 2018. Anna is going to read a letter to her mother, which is published in the book, along with the 796 names of the Tuam babies.
This is a letter I wrote to my mother. It's close to the end of the book and it took me a long time to do it. I had to dig very, very deeply into my soul because this whole book and everything I had come to at that stage was a very unusual, very strange, very painful and very cathartic exercise. So I needed to say something to my mother, so I'm going to read the letter that I have written to her. And I call her Ma. It's Dublinese for mother. So, dear Ma, this has been the worst few years of my life. I've had nothing but troubles. I've had work and health issues. I've had domestic and personal issues. But do you want to know what's been the worst of them all? I have family issues. Ma, in 2012, I found out that I had two brothers that I never knew about. And you never told me about. I was an only child, but now I'm a third child. God only knows how that feels. I used to think I was special, enfant, unique, but that too has changed. Ma, why did you never tell me? I know our relationship was strained at the best of times, but this, I've never felt so sad and hurt and lost and betrayed. I could go on. Ma, when I was young, I know that you did your very best for me. Your best for me, your very best. But I still grew up to be Anna. I was wild and you worried. The more you gave out, the further we pushed apart, until eventually our relationship fractured. I still needed you. I brought you out. I brought you to stay in my home with the kids, but still the tension was always there. We fought like I'm sure most mothers and daughters do, maybe even a little more, but I have no yardstick. Looking back, I know you loved me, but you never said it, and now I know why. I've read what your life was like. I've seen and felt your losses. I cannot even begin to understand how damaged you were. But like me, you always showed your tougher self. Did you teach me that? I remember you talked and you smiled. You enjoyed yourself. You were never bitter. And the best thing I admire was your kindness and your generosity. I hope that I have some of those traits. I try. You cared for everybody. You never spoke bad of anybody. You always kept your faith. Even now, anybody who knows you only remembers you with fondness. Ma, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. I wish I could turn back time and put my arms around you and tell you, I wish that you were alive, that I could have, I wish that when you were alive I could have done something to right the wrongs you endured. How did you feel being away from your family, ostracized from your village and giving birth to your children alone? Losing them and being alone and unloved. When you met my father, did he bring the joy into your life that was missing? Did he help you to heal? Are you with him now? Where are you, Ma? Ma, I sit and I talk to people who were in the home the same time as John and William. I listen to what their lives were like. I listen to their stories of how they found their mothers. I try to fill in the gaps. I feel so protective towards them. I cry a lot when nobody sees. Ma, I know you're in heaven and you're looking down on us, and I'm sure up there you know the true picture of what happened to your children and all the others. Help me find my brothers, Ma. I beg you, send me a sign. Help me, help us all. What's happening here can only be resolved by divine intervention. Send us your love. Ask the other mothers to help. Ask the children to help us find them. Please do something, because there's so much hurt and pain and so many fractured families. I don't know how long more I can go on. I'm so sorry. I love you so much, Anna.